And this webinar is based on the white paper we published, I think, a couple of months ago. And this webinar is about use cases in customer support. So I maybe quickly introduce myself, and then I'll introduce my co-founder, Norm, who is spending a lot of time within Codif thinking about potential use cases and, in customer support and like automation and AI. So quickly about myself, I'm Chingiz. I'm one of the founders of Codif. I am basically all about, business, sales, marketing, and everything around that. Sometimes customer success. And yeah, I'm excited to have Norm here. And I think, Norm, do you want to maybe introduce yourself? And especially, I think it would be helpful for the audience to learn about your Uber experience, or what you guys built there, and how you're thinking about, AI and product at Codif.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chingiz. Hey, everybody. I'm a CTO at Codif, technical co-founder. So before Codif, I was at Uber for 5 years. I was part of the customer obsession team. So anything you pretty much see on Uber Eats app when you go to the help section was built by the team, which I was part of. In terms of like all the automations that you see, that was actually the platform I set up from scratch. And basically all the self-service kind of experiences that you see in that section right now is powered by that platform. We leveraged AI, we leveraged kind of low-code automation as well. Nice to meet you, everybody.
Cool. And as you know, the webinar is about use cases in customer support we see for generative AI. I think we prepared a few slides, and yeah, I think that's what's going to be, the main content, I think, of the webinar. At the same time, we'll be asking some questions in the poll. So please feel free to, give your reaction. At the end of the webinar, we'll be sharing the results. And they're all going to be around AI and use cases maybe you're seeing in customer support. So here is to you, Norm. And do you want to start sharing? I think.
All right. Can you guys see my screen?
I can see it. I think everyone can see it as well.
Cool. So quick agenda. So we'll go over the history of LLMs, comparison of GPT 3.5 and 4, why it's important, and the use cases, which is, I think, the most interesting part, and we'll leave some time for Q&A at the end. So history. So the these are kind of language models. This is not a new concept. It's been around for a while. But I think where things started to get interesting was where in around 2000s we started getting like the word embeddings and kind of semantic. We were able to kind of add semantic meaning and search by that. And then I think around 2010 there was a transfer learning, which is kind of what the LLMs are based on. Which all of this enabled kind of around, this last few years, LLMs and specifically GPT kind of models. And by the way, GPT is just the most powerful one, but a lot of other players are catching up. And there are already some pretty good open source models available as well. So things are changing weekly, if not daily. So this is like a lot of stuff is happening right now. Quickly, we've been a lot of people were asking what's the difference between 3.5 and 4. I think the most importantly, it's the size. As you can see, that's kind of the comparison. It's much larger. It's much more accurate, and it gives much kind of better results for humans. Also, it can analyze the image inputs. So basically, you can give it an image and you can ask questions about it. It has some pretty good performance there. You can steer it better. So instructions prompts are better understood. Higher kind of word limits. So in the model, there were a limitation around how many tokens or like words basically you can send. So with GPT-4, it's much higher basically. And support for more languages is much better, especially the major languages. But also, since there is a lot more data, and since GPT is overall trained like on the internet, on the data that's on internet, since there is more data, even kind of less popular languages are actually supported pretty well as well. So that's kind of a quick overview. With GPT-4 though, right now, there are some limitations on kind of the number of requests you can make, but that's changing pretty fast as well. All right, so why is this important? I mean, I think at this point, everybody or most people understand, but depending on who you ask, some people compare it to like the industrial revolution level of change. Some other people say it's kind of invention of fire. That might be a bit too much, but it's basically gonna change a lot of things, I believe. Specifically in customer support, I think there are a lot of use cases because a lot of communication happens over chat and over text, and that's kind of the best medium where LLMs really perform really well. So there's going to be a lot of, I think, change in there, especially for SMB companies and mid-market companies. Why? Because it's much easier now to build like a chatbot, and you don't really need to train it a lot. I mean, that was the limitation. So previously, so before LLMs, right, training a chatbot would require a lot of resources, which was cost prohibitive for like small and medium businesses. And now, actually, that's a lot easier because all you need to do is basically feed your data, and then, of course, fine-tune the model a little bit. But that after that, beyond that, it does pretty good job for a lot of use cases. So I think that's why it's important. But there are also other areas where in customer support where LLMs can be leveraged.
One thing, Norm, I also wanted to highlight in the previous slide is in the old school, way of building chatbots, it was mostly about telling a chatbot what to do, right? Because it was kind of a blank page, and it was all about instructing them and providing keywords. And I think with this new wave, what's very different is that it's more about telling the chatbot what not to do, because they know everything. They can answer any question. So now it's more about guardrails, giving instructions what not to do. So it's kind of it's kind of flipped, right? The whole idea of how you build these things from instructing what to do to instructing what not to do. So I think it's a very big shift, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And also to add to that, I think training chatbots just required a lot of data, and only companies with a lot of volume of incoming requests, right, would have enough data to really train a really well, really good chat experience. So with LLMs, actually, that kind of also because that barrier is also much lower now. You pretty much don't need any data because inherently LLM has a human kind of well, not human level understanding, but very, very human-like understanding and response capabilities. Cool. So we'll dive deeper into each one of these use cases, and we'll start with the chat experience, which we already discussed. Then we'll touch upon dynamic macros, how we can leverage LLMs in knowledge articles, and other use cases. So of course, the first use case is chatbot. As I already mentioned, you can create a high quality chatbot without a lot of data, because a lot of human understanding and semantic understanding is already part of the LLM. I think the problem becomes, like Cheng mentioned, is how do we prevent LLM from hallucinating, from like coming up with like answers which are not actually part of your company policies or company knowledge base. Second, you don't need a lot of training and engineering here, because as we said, you just need to basically connect all of your data to the LLM. And as I mentioned, the challenge is to limit to some specific topics, right? You don't want the chatbot talking about some random topics on your company's website. You want the chatbot to be talking about things that are within your knowledge base, FAQs and stuff like that. And the kind of the the way you limit the chatbots to your specific content, to your company's content, is by using GPT embeddings. So that's basically kind of allows LLMs to semantically find the content that's needed and then answer the question based on that content. And previously, a lot of things were done using keyword search, which was not very effective, right? And with semantic search, which LLMs enable, it's much easier to find, to match the right content from your knowledge bases. Also, a lot of languages are supported out of the box. So again, you don't need to train on a lot of languages. As long as the language is well represented on internet, usually that's a good indicator of the GPT performance as well. Personalization is where things get a bit more interesting, because this is where you need to get you need to expose your internal data connected to the LLM, and now it will be able to answer not just questions based on your FAQs, but also questions based on your maybe customer's profile, customer's information, maybe their last order or their last shipment, or whatever it is that you have. So connecting all of the data and properly answering the questions is the next opportunity. Of course, here there is some kind of custom work required still. And also this is not limited to chat. The same functionality can work over email, SMS, social media, whatever other text-based channels you have. And near future, we see a lot of our customers, they have actually images. So customers kind of attaching images, photos. So with GPT-4, you are able to kind of, in the near future, will be able to analyze these images as well and like answer the questions based on that. So a good example would be, we see cases when people, they don't want to enter their, let's say the SKU, the item number. They just take a photo of their label and they just send it. So here, the GPT-4 can do a really good job by like basically getting the number from the image and automatically doing some actions based on that. So that's first use case, kind of chat conversations. Yep, and quick kind of, I guess, shameless plug is we have a GPT playground. So basically, you can go to Codif, this URL over here. I think we can post it on the chat as well. And there you can basically kind of, if you have an existing help center, you can use that help center URL. You can enter that on that playground, and you can, within 10-15 minutes, you can create a very simplistic, like a simple chatbot based on LLMs, and you can just play with it and see what are the capabilities, like what kind of questions it can answer. It's really interesting. Yeah, so as I mentioned, again, you would, on that page, you can click on add a new company, I think, or here, over here. And then here you would select your CRM, link to your help center, And then if you select yes or no here, it will kind of, your company can become available on that public page. If you click no, it's not going to become available. It's going to be just private link just for you. Cool.
I just shared the link, so in the chat in Q&A. So
cool. Thanks, Chungus. The second use case is dynamic macros. So basically, this is more of an agent-facing functionality. And here you are like, you have your macros in your help center, CRM, Zendesk, Salesforce, and others. And here, basically, you can surface the right macros to the customer, right? Oh, sorry, to an agent. So, let's say Zendesk is already doing that to some degree, I think for specific use cases, but you can take it even further, actually. So, and not just taking the macros, but also looking at the history of agent replies, of like the older agent replies, and also using the macros. And based on all of that information, generating the response that should be used by agent, right? And the good thing is that here you can also set your kind of your voice of the company. So since that suggestion will be shown to all your agents, and they're more likely to use that, your company will have a more unified kind of voice presented to your customers, which we already see from our kind of some of our existing customers. They kind of appreciate that part. Also, by rating these suggestions, basically, the model gets even more accurate. And so as agents use it more and more, it becomes kind of even more precise, right? Yep, and this is not limited to just macros, not just responses. This could be actions as well. So it could suggest that here an agent maybe should perform an action, maybe like issue a refund to the customer, and then maybe the suggestion should be like as yet another action that agent can take. So yeah, some interesting things. Also, one thing to add here. You can kind of, when you choose the history of your past ticket interactions, right? You can say, okay, like, please choose only my best agents, right? Because I want only their tickets, their responses to be used as a suggestion for all the other agents. As from our experience, we see that companies that have a lot of kind of churn, let's say they are constantly hiring new agents, or maybe they have seasonal agents, right? So basically, people who are not experienced in with your company's data. So for them, these suggestions are really useful because they don't have to go kind of and ask what should be the response here, what should be the right response, right? So yeah, that's kind of a really interesting functionality here. Cool. So again, I think shameless plug. So we have that functionality. We call it Codif Copilot. It is part of the Chrome plugin. We can pre-train it on your KB articles, FAQs, and previous tickets, history of tickets. And not only that, we can actually also ingest things like your maybe Slack channel history and other places. So wherever your agents look for information on how to kind of resolve the ticket, how to handle the ticket, any of that data source you can ingest and then make that suggestion kind of copilot, right, for your agents. Cool. The other use case is knowledge-based, and it's just not like using knowledge-based to give replies to your customers or your agents. Here, it's by how do you make your knowledge base even better? How to improve the knowledge base, right? Because once you expose your chatbot to, let's say, your customers, let's say LLM-powered chatbot, then you see which questions are not being answered. So you take all of that information and then you go back to your agents or supervisors and you say, hey, look, these questions don't have answers, or maybe they don't have the good answers. Can you write more content here? And you can actually go even beyond that and kind of, well, before I go, so basically you are kind of augmenting your existing content writers, because you can also look at like your old tickets, right, where customers asked about the same questions, and you can have LLMs suggest to you what should be the content based on your previous interactions. Of course, it's just a suggestion because you should go and vet that it's correct, and maybe there's something else you want to add there. But once you do that, once you save it, now that KB feeds back again to the LLM, and now next time customer asks the same question, now the answer will be given, right? So it's kind of this cycle of the constant improvement. And of course, as I already mentioned, the sources here can be the categories which are not handled by your KBs, history of responses from your best agents, etc. So basically, by improving your knowledge base, you are automatically improving your chatbot experience as well. And we see this kind of working pretty well, because one important thing about LLMs is your content. The more content you have, the better is your LLM gonna be, right? And that content is useful now for LLMs. It's also useful for your agents, and you can also expose it as an FAQ. So it kind of becomes like this an interesting knowledge based improvement of your whole help center. Cool. And then another use case is summarization. So basically, in some cases, usually what we see is like company agents and companies, they usually say we trust our customers, and a lot of companies, they don't actually go back and check on the previous tickets to make sure that the customer is saying is not lying, let's say. But we see that when situations become complicated, when customer is reaching out many times already, and there's been a lot of communication before, summarizing all of these tickets in one place and saying like, okay, customer went through this, and at this point, they are very angry, let's say, or something. So this giving that summary seems very important for escalation use cases when supervisor wants to quickly understand the whole situation. And this can also work for voice conversations, phone conversations, because you can basically take your the recorded call, right, and you kind of convert it into text, and just after that it just becomes a regular LLM task. OpenAI introduced Whisper, which is pretty accurate. It's like based on all the industry benchmarks, it does pretty well. So I think it's one of these features which are not very visible of the GPT-4, but which has been really interesting for customer support. And the benefits is that agents can now look up relevant information faster. And QA teams, when they're like evaluating performance of other agents, they can just quickly understand the whole context and look at the reply of an agent and say, okay, this was the right one, or maybe not the right one. So as a result, the QA team can now analyze much more tickets, right? They can because with QA, the problem is, how many agents tickets can you actually QA, right? But here you can do it faster, so you can actually have a larger coverage overall. And these 4 are just the use cases we have seen, and we've seen that they are really providing some good value for the business. Like there's really impact here. But we also see some other use cases as well, right? We see ticket classification. Interesting story is that we've been training models ourselves before for the customers who have a lot of data. And then we started using kind of LLMs for the same task, and then LLMs do better job, right? So it just became very easy and faster to classify tickets now with LLMs. And of course, if you give it more examples, it's gonna do even better, of course. Smarter IVRs, so you can build, you know, the phone systems when it's not just buttons, but it's actually understanding what you're saying. So you can build them as well. This is a bit kind of tangential, but it's a use case definitely, because we expect that there will be more and more companies who will actually have smarter IVR systems. Interactive email SMS tickets. So here, the idea is that in a lot of cases, you can actually quickly respond automatically to your emails and SMS tickets if you have a very high confidence that your reply is correct, right? Let's say one example is customer is complaining saying, hey, I have like this, whatever, the item that you shipped me is broken, right? So the usual question that's asked is like, okay, give us the product, whatever, the ID, right, the SKU number. So that can happen immediately, so that customer provides more data. That way you are reducing your average handle time. Image recognition for damaged items, that can be done as well. That's been possible before as well. Now with the image kind of capabilities, that's also can be done. You can actually ask specific questions. Of course, the problem here is if somebody just finds this image on the internet and uploads it here, there's no way to know that it was just some other image. So there are some limitations here. And that's been a problem at Uber as well. But, if somebody says, somebody, I don't know, damaged the internals of like the seats, right? They spilled something on my seat. I mean, how do you know it's a photo of their car and not some other car? Decision automation. So this is more around the low code, no code kind of when you are actually trying to build the flows, which are very concrete, which are doing specific things. So here a lot of decisions can now be also automated using asking that question to LLMs. So you give the context and you ask a specific question, and then you continue. And the GPT playground is basically what we shared earlier. So you can quickly kind of get the data and show the results of how this would perform without a lot of effort. Yep, I think this is this was the last slide. So we have more resources here. Cengiz, I think you can share the link to we wrote a white paper on the use cases and the difference between 3.5 and 4, I think more in a more detailed fashion. And if you're interested in like the playground, Copilot, there are links here as well, which I think Cengiz can share in the chat. Cool.
I think we have questions if you go on the Q&A section, and I think we have a few questions about brand, I think. I think Rajesh is asking about the brand style. How do we incorporate the brand style, fine-tuning? I mean, you see, right, all the questions on the left side.
How are you incorporating the brand style? So the brand style, there are two ways of doing it. One way is you actually just you just prompt it. You just tell LLM, I want the brand style to be, let's say, concise and professional, or like more empathetic and maybe more verbose, right? So that's one way. And the second way, if you use your historical tickets, to answer the question, LLM is actually really good at picking up the brand style of your previous interactions. So let's say another example could be like if you like specific agents and how they reply, you like how they do it, you basically only use the historical tickets from these agents, and that's gonna kind of dictate how the brand style is gonna look like. And the third way, you can actually provide examples, and you can say, hey, this should be the structure of the reply. The greeting should look like this roughly. The body should look like this. The footer, like the ending, should look like this, and maybe the ending should say like, sincerely yours or whatever, right? And LLMs will kind of mimic that and do it in a similar way. Cool.
Then the next question is fine-tuning the models for every customer. How are you managing the data privacy issue?
Good question. There are two questions here. So, are you fine-tuning models for every customer? So right now, LLMs, they are not, well, if we use GPT, by the way, we don't only use OpenAI GPT models. We also use Anthropic. We also use open source models, right? So when we use open source model, yes, we fine tune it. If we are using commercial models, we don't fine tune it. You can call it fine tune it, but it's not like a machine learning fine tuning, right? Basically, we are able to specify custom replies. So you can say, if this question was asked, you should give this specific reply and ignore what LLM does, right? So let's say if you have an outage, you add a custom reply saying, if somebody is asking about availability issues of your product, say there is an ongoing outage, and here's the link where they can watch what's going on right now. And another way we allow for direction, we just say, basically, remember I was mentioning about like the feedback cycle, right? You can say whenever some response was rated high or low, basically thumbs up or thumbs down, we kind of give it a priority, right? So that's kind of that's how we fine tune it. And the privacy issues, I think, so there are a few things here. With open source model, there is like no privacy issues. With the commercial models, I think it depends. OpenAI, they have an option where you say, okay, don't use my data, but you would be still sending it, right? So there, I think it depends on the comfort level of each company. With the Anthropic, let's say, you can have your own kind of instances running. So we kind of use that, then data is not the concern. And also when we send the data, there's an option to mask the PII. So whenever we take something and then we actually do the LLM whatever processing or inference, we, let's say, remove the PII data. And PII is the personally identifiable information, which are names, phone numbers, emails, addresses, so whatever can be used to identify the customer. And that's usually the main concern of all the SOC 2, GDPR, and all the other audits, right? So yeah, that's kind of what we do, but we've been working with customers in various fields, and so far we were able to kind of handle all the privacy issues.
So next question is, are there any real-world case studies or success stories that demonstrate the benefits of GPT for support teams? I'll take this, Norm. So yeah, we have a few internal case studies. We have a few customers, and they were mostly using this chat use case, I think, which Norm described earlier. So, and we are deflecting, I think, around 30-40% for our customers. Customers can just come and kind of get the answer without talking to a human. That's kind of something what we've seen internally. Especially, it's good when you have a lot of knowledge base articles. It's very helpful when you have very extensive library and when there are a lot of tier 1 questions being asked. Just simple questions where AI can really help answer. Another thing I also want to share here is this it's kind of an academic paper which came out from Stanford and MIT, where they studied the productivity impact from AI. And they found that support teams' productivity, it was more like the co-pilot use case. They improved the productivity of agents by 35%. And I think the very interesting finding from this paper was that the gap between high-skilled and low-skilled agents got reduced by around 15%. So which basically, which is very promising, because this paper also, when it was written, it was based on the GPT 3.5 results. And I think with GPT-4, I think this is going to even get better and better. So yes, in short, there are real world use cases already and success stories. So cool. Next question is, do you have a playbook with templates or best practices that can be used by users to understand how to manage and organize their knowledge base in such a way that the AI can acquire the correct information and decrease errors? Norm, you want to take this?
Yeah, I'll take it. So good question. We have an internal playbook, which it's still in progress. We're developing it. So there, it's kind of playbook of best practices, right? So what we see is companies leverage a lot of ways, or there are a lot of ways in which companies store this data and make it available to either customers or agents. And connecting to all these data sources and properly incorporating them, I think, is a big challenge. But we see like these big two buckets, I would say. One is if you just make your knowledge bases, FAQs, searchable and usable by LLMs, pretty much any text source, like it could be PDF files, it could be websites, it could be your Jira Confluence or something like that, right? So whatever there is a text that's used, you just need to kind of index it and get it inside, right? Which we handle. So the data, you don't really need to organize or structure the data, right? You just need to make it available, right? So that we can, let's say, ingest it. On the second side of it, though, is a lot of companies, they have tickets issues where it's not just about data, right? It's about going somewhere and doing other things, right? Say you need to go to Shopify and look up the order number, understand what's happening, understand where the shipment is, let's say, stuff like that. So this is where I think our kind of low-code, no-code system helps, because now you can combine the LLM functionality, and you can have your kind of more deterministic flows, right? So you just say, ticket comes in, you say, okay, is this a ticket about the status of the order, right? If it is, go and perform these actions. Go to Shopify, look up the order, get the status where it is right now, and then generate the LLM response with the location of this order. Or, ticket comes in. If it's not related to order situation, if it's a more general question, then go use your kind of internal knowledge bases to generate the response for that. I think that's a high level playbook, right? But of course, you go deeper. There are some more complicated stuff. Let's say you have different data sources. Let's say you have Jira. Let's say you have your FAQs and something else. Let's say your historical tickets. How do you combine all of that and give a good response, right? So here there are some good practices as well. It's kind of depends on the company, but you can prioritize some content over the other content, let's say, and do stuff like that. So that's like the quick overview, of course, but of course the devil is in the detail. But to answer your question, there is no public playbook, but we have some best practices.
Now, the next question is there a data set size required to run with a minimum guarantee?
Is there a data set required to run with a minimum guarantee? No, really, there is no. The data can be as large as you have. There's no limitation on the data size whatsoever.
But I think maybe one caveat here, Norm, is that there should be extensive library, right, of knowledge-based articles and maybe historical tickets, so that it's.
Oh, I see. I think I got the question. I didn't get the question. I think the question is about like how big should the data set be to get the response, right?
To get
Okay.
it's useful to a certain extent, I think.
I think the best way is to try. We see the more data, the better. But maybe you can use the playground and kind of try through there and see and enter the kind of your usual requests. Or if let's say if your data is not part of your FAQ or help center, you can actually reach out to us. We can generate something for you, like a quick prototype based on whatever data you give us, and then you can play with that, see how useful or not useful it's going to be. Is it necessary some kind of setup low code integration, or with the plugin integration is enough to start working? Low code integration. So we've shown you kind of two, I think, products. One was the chatbot, and another one was the agent facing, right? So with the chatbot, there's no integration to either one of them. Well, no, the data integration. So whatever data you have, to get the data over and to start using it, that's when there might be some integrations, right? Okay, if it's a website, if it's publicly available on the web, we can just parse the data and ingest. There is no integration needed. Now for the chatbot, we'll generate like a snippet, and you just take that snippet and you put it on your website, and that's it. It becomes available. If we're talking about the Copilot, it's actually a Chrome plugin. So it will give you Chrome kind of marketplace link. You click on it, you install the plugin, and that's it. You're running. If you want to integrate more data sources like Shopify, other stuff, Jira or Slack, then there's going to be kind of additional integration, of course.
And I guess there's a last question on the practical pain points of working with GPT or other LLMs, such as managing multiple prompts.
Okay. I think the practical, really, each company is different. And I think measuring the quality of replies consistently, and then whenever you make an improvement, whenever you add a data source, right, to see before and after, right? Because that needs basically a human level, like somebody needs to sit there and like go over 100, 200 tickets and say, okay, this looks like my rating would be 4.3, whatever, based on the replies, right? Then let's say you add more data sources, you change some things, and then you do it again. You have to do it again. That's a bit resource kind of and time consuming to do that. So kind of a good indicator here, I think, is the CSAT, but that's a bit longer kind of metric, right? And we're actually trying something out right now. We're trying to see if we can ask LLM itself to kind of grade our responses. But of course, LLMs, they don't really know things about your company, right? What's the best reply in this case? Reply might be kind of okay, might be valid when somebody looks at it, but if somebody at your company looks at it, they might say, no, that's not valid, right? So I think that's kind of one of the practical big pain points overall. Managing multiple prompts, I think as long as you make it customizable for each company, then each company can kind of manage it themselves and say, okay, my prompt should look like this. So there, I think we see kind of end of the light in the tunnel. And of course, there are a lot of kind of purely engineering and data science things, but I would say that's kind of the big high level pain points.
I think this was the last question, and I think we're already over time. Thanks for everyone for spending this 45 minutes with us. And yeah, so please, if you don't follow us on LinkedIn, please follow us on LinkedIn. There will be posting more content. We'll be doing more webinars. The next one, we're gonna do a workshop where in real time, we will build a fully functioning chatbot for one of companies. So and we'll show how to do it in less than 15-20 minutes. So please follow us on LinkedIn and send us any questions you might have. So thanks for everyone. Thanks, Nor, for your webinar. And yeah, let's.
Yeah. Thanks everybody.
Thanks, guys. Thanks everyone.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks for your questions. Yep. Bye.